Hey everyone, welcome to week one of our series called The Good Life. And if you're tuning in, it's because you're interested in the good life. I mean, who isn't, right? Everyone wants to have that. As we grow through our middle school and high school years, we're planning for a good life, whether it's to be a star athlete, a business mogul, maybe an entertainer, a social influencer, whatever it might be. We all want that good life, but what does it really look like? And how do we get there? And do we just follow the crowd? Is there another path? Do we chart our own? What happens with all of that? And is there any help from anywhere when it comes to living the good life? Well, we're going to spend 5 weeks talking about that and unpacking, because it may not be a surprise to you, maybe it is, but Jesus has some things to say about what it means to live the good life. And I'd love to hear what he has to say. So what we're going to do is kick it to our first week. So I want you to watch this. And then when you come back, we'll talk some more about the good life.
Can we talk about something that doesn't get enough attention? I'm talking about the fact that cars are literally out there driving themselves. Is this not absolutely wild to anyone else? You're a teenager, which means that you were definitely alive before this was a reality. It also means you've probably heard of one of the people who made it possible, Elon Musk. He led his team to build electric vehicles that save the planet and save you the stress of cutting off people in traffic. The car literally does both for you. Actually, I have a friend who has a story about it. Check it out.
I first experienced a self-driving car when my wife decided to rent me a Tesla Model X for my birthday. I'm still not really sure why she rented it instead of buying it for me, but I'm gonna get through it. It'll be okay. Well, anyways, I get behind the wheel of this self-driving car and we go down the side streets, get onto the freeway, and as soon as we get onto the freeway, I know it's go time. I press the button to activate Autopilot, let my hands off of the wheel, and this thing takes off. I mean, it was driving itself. Like, it was taking curves and switching lanes and doing all sorts of things all on its own. I mean, I was sitting behind the wheel watching all of this happen, and I was like blown away. I was excited, but I was also terrified. I mean, if I have to be honest, I was kind of on the verge of peeing my pants. Like, this was insane. This car was driving itself. Now, if you've never experienced Autopilot, I mean, you still know what I'm talking about. You get this. There are videos all over YouTube about this exact experience. But what I got to experience, whew, it was unbelievable.
Okay, so this autopilot thing, this is happening with more than just cars. Every year, more of life goes on autopilot. See? Every day, tasks and activities can be done for us automatically by AI, machines, or even robots. It sounds like science fiction, but you already know how real it is. Bakeries are being replaced by cupcake vending machines. Complicated banking is replaced by autopay, and grocery shopping, or really any shopping, has been replaced by Amazon Prime and Instacart. And this idea of outsourcing everyday tasks in our lives seems convenient. But what happens when we start living our whole lives on autopilot? We go through the motions. We wake up, get to our classes, do our homework, make it through practice, hit the bed at night, and do it all over again the next day. Yes, there are moments of excitement along the way, like when we go to an event or spend time with our crush, hello, or level up on our favorite video game. But for the most part, we're coasting. We're watching the world happen through the windshield of our lives on autopilot. And if we do this, things can get dark pretty quickly. Here's what I mean. Living on autopilot can eventually cause us to feel down. Because if we're honest, a lot is going on in the world that's not great. And when we're on autopilot, that's all we see. Bad news pops up as we scroll. People at school tend to talk about tough or controversial topics more than anything, and drama gets most of the attention from our friends. It feels like we're constantly reminded of how bad life is for other people in broken situations. Soon, it begins to feel like that's all there is. Others of us may not struggle with what I just described, but even though our outlook might be a little more positive, we still feel like we go through the motions. Our routine, friend groups, the walls of our high school, they just seem so blah. It's not that it's all awful, it's that they're all the same, day in and day out. Life just feels repetitive, boring, and kind of like walking on a treadmill, never really taking you anywhere different. This kind of autopilot leaves us thinking something like, yo, there's got to be more to life than this. We know deep down that we were made for more. We crave a way to get the most out of life, but we're not really sure how to wake ourselves up and get it. Whether we struggle with this feeling all the time or just in certain seasons of life, we all know what it's like to live on autopilot. And let's be honest, this is not the life we really want. So, what is the life we really want? Well, I did a little bit of Googling and found the answer to this question, at least according to music. From G-Eazy to Frank Sinatra, I looked up songs with the good life somewhere in them, and here's what they have to say the good life looks like. Fun, food, money, cars, big cities. Even my girl Riri, Rihanna herself, summed it up this way a while back. You're gonna be a shining star in fancy clothes and fancy cars, and then you'll see you're gonna go far, cause everyone knows just who you are, so live your life. Hey, 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 you steady chasing that paper. That's a good song, brilliant even. John Denver said, life is so good. Life is so good these days. I don't know that one like the Riri song, but those old timers just got straight to the point. Your older sibling's favorite country singer, Kenny Chesney, said, life is good, the grass is green, the good Lord smiling on you and me. You see what I did? Said like a true country music icon. But come on, let's be real here. This isn't what life looks like for most of us. It isn't really attainable. We also know plenty of people who've achieved this version of the good life and still seem miserable. They may be rich and famous, but in a way, they're living with that same sense of autopilot as the rest of us. So if this is the best way that's out there, then we must be looking for something different. Deep down, we're looking for a different kind of good life. How in the world can we find it? Jesus, the man who claimed to be God in human form and lived a couple thousand years ago, might have an idea. Jesus said a lot of things during his years of teaching, but there's one statement that speaks directly to what we're talking about today. His friend John thought it was so important that he included it in his biography of the life of Jesus, which we now call the book of John in the Bible. Jesus was in the middle of explaining who he was and how he would set all of humanity right with God. Here's what he said. The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. Jesus says there is a way of life out there that only leads to hurt, pain, and sadness, but I'm here to show you how to live the good life. I can show you how to get the most out of this life that you have. That's a bold statement. Jesus claimed to be the one who could truly show us how to live the good life. Years later, a guy named Paul, one of the most influential Christian leaders in history, explained a little more about what Jesus meant when he said this. In Paul's letter to Christians in Galatia, he lays out what it means to follow Jesus and experience all that he came to earth to make possible. Before he gets there, Paul tells us what comes naturally to us as human beings, kind of like what life can start to look like lived on autopilot. Listen to this long list of things he writes. It is obvious what kind of life develops out of trying to get your own way all the time. Repetitive, loveless, cheap sex, a stinking accumulation of mental and emotional garbage, frenzied and joyless grabs for happiness, trinket gods, magic show religion, paranoid loneliness, cutthroat competition, all-consuming yet never satisfied wants, a brutal temper, an impotence to love or be loved, divided homes and divided lives, small-minded and lopsided pursuits, the vicious habit of depersonalizing everyone into a rival, uncontrolled and uncontrollable addiction, ugly parodies of community. I could go on. Yikes. Subtlety was clearly not Paul's strong suit. And I don't know about you, but when I think about the kind of future I want, it does not look like this. Not to throw shade, but Paul's list doesn't sound like the good life at all. In fact, it sounds a lot like the kind of life we can easily fall into on autopilot. So, what's the alternative? What is the good life? Paul tells us in the next verse. But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance or patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. That's more like it. These words characterize Jesus' life on earth. And in fact, when we see these things in ourselves, in others, and in the world around us, we can be sure we are seeing God at work. And isn't that the life we really want? The stuff Paul writes about here, the stuff Jesus demonstrated with his own life, this stuff sounds like the good life. Who doesn't want more love, joy, peace, forbearance, or patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control? We want more of these things in ourselves, our relationships, and our world as a whole because they lead to the good life. And the good news is that Paul is very clear about how we get them. He says that they are fruit of the Spirit. The Spirit Paul's talking about is the Holy Spirit, the power that Jesus promised to his followers. This Spirit is the very real presence and power of God. We often talk about God as Father and Son, meaning Jesus, but the Holy Spirit is just as much God as the Father and Son. The Spirit is who lives in us, giving us the power and help to live a life full of the fruit that Paul mentions. Ultimately, the Spirit is helping us to live life more like Jesus because those good things are what his life was full of. God made us to be spiritual beings. The word spirituality has a lot of different meanings these days, but what if there was more to it? There's more to being a Christian than just believing certain things and trying really, really, really hard to do what God says is best. Something supernatural is happening even when we can't see it. That's where the Holy Spirit comes in. Here's another way to think about this. In this series, we're talking about the fruit of the Spirit. They're basically the good things that are a result of staying connected to the Spirit of God. Just like an orange tree produces oranges, God produces characteristics in us when we stay close to God. And this is good news because that's a much better scenario than if it were up to us to produce the characteristics on our own. The orange grows from the orange tree. The orange is evidence that there is life inside of the orange tree. In the same way, when we partner with the Spirit and live our lives in a way that shows the characteristics Paul mentioned, it's proof that the Spirit is alive and working in us. As Christians, the Spirit lives in us at the core of who we are. The Spirit is the power and help of God inside of us, moving us toward a life that is more in line with what Jesus demonstrated in his own life. The Spirit works to make us who we were always meant to be, taking our autopilot lives and making something bigger, something good, something fuller, just like Jesus mentioned. We'll unpack this more in the coming weeks, but for now, this is Paul's big idea about the way to really live the good life. Paul says that what's natural for us is not what's best. Then he says that we can get what we really want in life through our supernatural helper, the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit guides you to the good life. The Holy Spirit is a better guide through life than autopilot. The Spirit steers the way, and we partner with the Spirit to experience the good life God has in mind for us. Let's talk about how to make this a reality. There are 2 steps we can start taking this week. First, stop living on autopilot. It's easier to go through the motions and grind through your days, but it's not the best thing for you. Turning off autopilot is all about awareness. It's about paying attention. Where is your life really heading? What is guiding you, leading you in the way you think and the way you act? Are you directed more towards Paul's first list or the list of the fruit of the Spirit? If we'd say the first list, the list of things we said we didn't want, chances are autopilot is moving us toward what's natural. Going with the flow of life, doing things on Paul's first list comes naturally. And I get it. Yo, I've been there. It's way easier, but it's a dead end. Instead, we can acknowledge today that where we're headed isn't where we want to go. We start by being honest about where we are now and turning off autopilot. Then we choose another way. The good life starts when we choose to go a different way with the life we have. God gives us the chance to choose. We can easily stay on autopilot and head wherever culture, society, and the algorithm take us. Or we can choose to turn off autopilot and go a different way, the way of the Spirit. Will this be easy? Not always. Changing the way we're living day to day takes time. But because of the Spirit, we aren't doing this on our own, and that is good news. So, if you're brand new to the idea of Christianity, start by asking someone like your small group leaders what it means to begin following Jesus and experiencing the Spirit guiding you. If you've been around this for a while but have found yourself back on autopilot in life, then maybe it's time to choose to take this part of your faith seriously again. To begin not just believing, but living differently because of what you believe about Jesus. You can start to choose a different way by asking yourself, where did I see God today? We can all be aware, turn off autopilot, and choose another way. In the coming weeks, we'll talk about what this other way looks like and how the Holy Spirit guides us to experience it. Just imagine living the life Paul described, a good life motivated by the Spirit. Imagine if you found a way to get off autopilot and get the most out of life. Imagine if there was a better way to do high school. This could change everything. You would begin to see God creating more of all the good things Paul mentioned in your life in very real ways. And you'd have a huge head start on people like me who can only wish we would have taken this more seriously at your age. The good life is possible. Let's do that. Now is the time to live the good life. When you head to small groups, think about your response to this question. How would you describe a life on autopilot?
Wow, how amazing was that to hear that the Holy Spirit is sent by Jesus and he wants to guide us to this good life. But sometimes we're a little bit turned off because we're on autopilot, as you heard. So maybe this week we could work on turning off autopilot, maybe choosing a different path, maybe thinking through what Jesus wants us to do in the power of the Holy Spirit. And so as you go through this week, maybe be thinking about what is it that Jesus wants me to turn off when it comes to autopilot, and where is it that he wants me to go under the direction of his Holy Spirit. And then come back next week and we'll watch as we continue to unpack what it means to live the good life.